Grenada commemorates the 50th anniversary of the nation's independence after more than 3 centuries of occupation by France and the United Kingdom. In Venezuela, the government denounced and described as threatening the statements by ExxonMobil authorities. In Palestine, the Israeli regime has killed over 27,500 people in Gaza after 4 months of relentless attacks. Hello, welcome to From the South. I'm Luis Alberto Matos from the teleSUR studios in Havana, Cuba. We begin with the news. The people of Grenada celebrated 50 years of independence on Wednesday after more than 3 centuries of occupation by France and the United Kingdom. During the day, citizens participated in the trade fairs, ecumenical services, as well as academic, sporting, and cultural activities. Various authorities and international guests highlight the nation's performance over the past 5 decades, the challenges ahead, and the prospects for achieving the Sustainable Development Goals. At the ceremony for the military parade, the Vice President of Venezuela, teleSUR, highlighted the heroic deeds of the people of Grenada and their progress in the processes of integration in the Caribbean. Independence was achieved on February 7, 1974, under the leadership of Eric Gary, who became Grenada's first prime minister as a sovereign state.
Our theme for this Golden Jubilee: one people, one journey, one future. One people. At the heart of any nation is its people, driven by trials, pain, fears, hopes, dreams, and successes. On this most special day, our Golden Jubilee, I stand with you not only to celebrate our 50th anniversary of independence, but to honor the memories of those who have so diligently and steadfastly paved the way so that we can have a better future.
The Prime Minister praised the Grenadian people for their resilience and unity to build a better nation and called on them to continue on the same path to ensure a better future.
So our journey, our independence journey, has been one of resilience, progress, and great aspirations. And in the face of our many challenges, we have shown that unity and strength that is so magnificently on display today. This remarkable journey has been the defining factor shaping the very essence of our nation. So let us continue on that journey today, fueled by determination and unity, a journey to build a better Grenada.
In Venezuela, the Executive Vice President teleSUR rejected the statements made by the President of ExxonMobil, assuring that the transnational is subrogating the sovereignty of the Cooperative Republic of Guyana. The Vice President indicated that the country is categorically opposed to these statements issued by Alistair Rutledge, President of the U.S. oil company. Caracas also qualified his statements as threatening, asserting that they encourage the legitimate route of the International Court of Justice to address the controversy over the Essequibo, as opposed to the Geneva Agreement, which calls for a peaceful solution agreed upon by both parties. Venezuela also noted that the President of ExxonMobil intends to protect its illicit operations in a sea that has yet to be delimited. Through the social media, ex-Vice President teleSUR stated Venezuela rejects threatening statements by ExxonMobil CEO Alistair Rutledge. He said the transnational not only assumes the sovereignty of Guyana, governs the high authorities of that country, and encourages the legitimate path of the International Court of Justice to the detriment of the Geneva Agreement, but also seeks to protect its illicit operations in a sea pending to be delimited. On the warmongering cloak of the U.S. in complicity with Guyana, this clearly violates the Argyll Accords and international legality. Venezuela will not rest in defending Essequibo and will assert its rights in all circumstances that arise. Also, the Minister of Defense, Vladimir Padrino Lopez, expressed in his profile of X, if ExxonMobil has a private security company represented by the Southern Command and a small branch in the government of Guyana, Good for them, but in the maritime space that rightfully belongs to Venezuela, they will receive a proportional, forceful response that adheres to right. The Essequibo is of Venezuela. Previously, authorities of the U.S. oil company ExxonMobil congratulated the measures adopted by the government of Guyana, which guarantee the presence of private security forces from the U.S. and other countries to protect the operations of the transnational. In this context, authorities of the oil company affirmed that the actions are a good prediction in the area of defense and security, not only for the country but also for the Western Hemisphere. The President, Alistair Rutledge, stated that the border controversy between Guyana and Venezuela continues to be of concern, as well as threatening operations in the oil sector. Finally, he added that the company is allowed by contract to operate within the waters yet to be delimited within the Essequibo territory. In El Salvador, commissions were set up to begin the recount of votes of the February 4th presidential and legislative elections. Several political parties denounced a series of irregularities in the vote counting process. In this context, they requested the elections to be declared null and void and, if possible, to be held again. They also pointed out that during the electoral exercise, the Supreme Electoral Tribunal had affirmed that the computer system would guarantee a speedy vote count, but after 72 hours, official results have not yet been issued. Political parties also reported that the situation is serious due to the fact that authorities have found ballots in different areas of San Salvador, which proves a breach in the custody of the ballots, adding yet another irregularity to the process already described as the most fraudulent since the peace agreements. In Chile, the funeral procession for former President Sebastián Piñera began after the arrival of his remains in the capital Santiago de Chile. On his arrival at the airport, Piñera's coffin was received by President Gabriel Boric, his foreign minister Alberto Van Claveren, the Minister of the Interior Carolina Toja, and other members of his cabinet. From there, they began a tour to the former Congress of the Republic, where the remains of the former president will be watched over until Friday. After his family and friends bid him farewell, the former Congress will open its doors to receive citizens who want to say goodbye to the former president. Piñera's remains will be later transferred to the Park of Remembrance Cemetery, where they will finally rest. Let's now take a short break, but remember you can join us on TikTok at teleSUR English, where you will find news in different formats, news updates, and much more. Other stories coming up. Stay with us. Welcome back from the south. In Palestine, after 4 months of the genocide of the Israeli occupation against the Gaza Strip, authorities reported several civilians killed and others wounded in a new Israeli attack. On Wednesday, Israeli fighter jets attacked a group of civilians while they were filling drinking water in the center of Gaza. While authorities indicated that of all the wounded and sick due to the unhealthy conditions in Gaza, indicating that at least 11,000 must be urgently evacuated to receive medical attention. For its part, the Palestinian Ministry of Health indicated that since the beginning of the Israeli genocide, more than 27,585 civilians, mostly children and women, have been killed, more than 66,978 have been wounded, and more than 8,000 have been reported missing. The Palestinian Ministry of Health reported on Wednesday that 2 youth were killed by the Israeli occupation forces in the Nur Shams refugee camp in the northern West Bank city of Tulkarem. According to a correspondent from the news agency Wafa, Israeli occupation forces cordoned off the home of one of the youth family in the middle of the camp and shelled the house using air missiles as bulldozers proceeded to demolish and destroy other parts of the house. Journalists also reported that the Israeli forces shelled the vicinity of the house before withdrawing from the camp. Ambulance crews managed to evacuate the bodies of the 2 youth from inside the targeted home. The Palestinian Prisoners Society said on Wednesday that the number of administrative detainees in Israeli occupation prisons reached 3,484 at the end of January. including at least 40 children and 11 women. The statement indicates that the occupation authorities have issued more than 3,400 administrative detention orders, including new and renewed orders, since the beginning of its comprehensive aggression against the Palestinian people in the Gaza Strip and the West Bank on October 7th of last year. The number of children in administrative detention reached at least 40, the number of females 11, and the number of journalists who were transferred to administrative detention reached 21, including a female journalist. In Palestine, the Hamas resistance group offered positive responses to the possible truce proposed by Qatar and Egypt. From Gaza, our colleague Uwe Hagazi with the details.
Ayer el portavoz del Ministerio de Asuntos Exteriores cataríes había anunciado de que ya...
Yesterday, the spokesman of the Qatari Foreign Ministry announced that it had finally received the response from the Palestinian Islamic Resistance Movement, Hamas, to the proposal for a humanitarian truce and a change of hostages, which had been proposed weeks ago at the Paris summit. According to the spokesman, the response issued yesterday by Hamas was quite positive, but it has set some conditions that will be issued to Israel in these days to receive the final response from Israel, whether it will accept this condition imposed by Hamas movement or not. Even yesterday, the Qatari intermediaries and the Egyptian intermediaries proceeded to send this answer to the Israeli Mossad, and at this moment, the American Ministry Antony Blinken and the Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu are having a security meeting to discuss this condition imposed by Hamas, to know if they could accept them or not, and finally issue an answer. Today, they have already proceeded to announce the condition imposed by Hamas. Hamas has proposed that this humanitarian truce or this temporary ceasefire be carried out in 3 phases. The first phase will include a humanitarian truce of about 45 days in the Gaza Strip, and in which some conditions will have to be carried out. The first condition is a temporary cessation of military acts, either by the Israeli army or by the Palestinian resistance fighters, and in response to this, Hamas will proceed to the Israeli hostages who are being held here in the Gaza Strip, but only children, women, and elderly people with illness and diseases, as well as the Palestinian resistance fighters. On the other hand, Israel will proceed to release a number of Palestinian prisoners held in the occupation prisons, but it has not yet been decided exactly how many or which prisoners will be released. Other conditions imposed by Hamas for this hostage exchange and this temporary cessation of military acts is that Israel must increase the amount of humanitarian aid entering the Gaza Strip to at least 500 trucks per day, including not only food but also fuel and medical supplies. Also reiterate the need for the entry of caravans and tents in the first phase, as for approximately 60,000 caravans and 200,000 tents for all these evacuated Gazatis who have been found themselves without homes and whose homes have been destroyed by the bombardment of the army of the Israeli occupation. Also, in the first phase, there was a partial withdrawal of the army of the Israeli occupation, which will be installed in the areas of the border territories of the Gaza Strip to allow the free movement of the inhabitants of the Gaza Strip, in addition to the return of the evacuees who are in the southern area to their homes, in the northern area and in the city of Gaza. Also, in the first phase, it had been requested the entry of the necessary mechanism to remove all the debris and all the destruction caused by the bombing of the army of the Israeli occupation. These have been the conditions that have been imposed in the first phase. In the second phase will also be a humanitarian truce of approximately 45 days, where Hamas will proceed to release detained men, including soldiers and senior officials, where Israel will also proceed to release a number of imprisoned Palestinians who are in the jails of the army of the Israeli occupation, also including leaders and senior officials of the Palestinian factions. And the condition condition that Hamas has imposed in the second phase is that Israel must begin to open the file of the reconstruction of the Gaza Strip, also begin to rebuild hospitals, medical centers, organizations, and not only housing, but also the infrastructures, all the electric currents and drinking water streams, which has been destroyed because of the bombardments of the Israeli occupation army, and also have to carry out the conditions that have been imposed in the first phase, in which will include the amount of humanitarian aid that was imposed in the first phase, the entry also of caravans of tents. In the third and last phase, there will be also a period of 45 days of humanitarian truce in the Gaza Strip, where Israel and Hamas will proceed to release the dead bodies and the dead that are in the Gaza Strip and that are being held in Israeli occupation prisons, and where all the conditions that have been imposed in the second and first phase will also be carried out. After these three phases, we'll be debating whether there will be an end to this war or whether they will resume again the military acts in the Gaza Strip. But what the Egyptian intermediaries and the Qatari intermediaries and the United States are doing is trying to reach a permanent agreement between these two entities to end this war in the Gaza Strip.
Es intentar llegar a un acuerdo permanente entre estas dos entidades para poner fin a este.
A senior Lebanon-based official in Palestinian militant group Hamas says that Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's continued pursuit of war in Gaza showed the goal was genocide against Palestinians.
The Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's insistence on continuing the aggression totally confirms that the goal of the aggression on Gaza is genocide against the Palestinian people. We will exert every effort to protect our people, whether through the resistance on the ground or through political efforts to stop the aggression.
Osama Hamdan, senior Hamas official, reaffirms his commitment to the people of Palestine working to improve their situation and alleviate their suffering.
In the context of following up on the ideas we presented and our commitment to achieving the best results that serve the interest of our people, alleviate their suffering and stop their pain by putting an end to the aggression against them and by ensuring complete relief through the lifting of the siege and facilitating the reconstruction process, a delegation from the movement's leadership, led by Dr. Khalil Al-Hayya, a member of the movement's political bureau, we traveled to Cairo to pursue these matters under Qatari-Egyptian sponsorship.
The government of Yemen launched 6 anti-ship ballistic missiles towards the southern Red Sea and the Gulf of Aden. In an official statement issued on Wednesday, the African nation's armed forces announced 2 military operations were carried out in the Red Sea against the U.S. ship Star Nasia and the British ship Morning Tide. The Houthi armed forces confirmed that the naval missiles had impacted both ships. On the other hand, the United States Central Command assured that in spite of the impacts, the 2 ships are operative and have continued towards their destination. Yemen's army announced in November 2023 the deployment of an operation in the Red Sea to block shipments to Israel in rejection of its siege against Gaza. We have a second short break coming up, but before we invite you to join our WhatsApp community for our English-speaking audience, you can scan the QR code on screen to join directly and share the link to reach more people. Constant news coverage of Latin America and the Caribbean as well as the rest of the world. Stay connected and informed with teleSUR. Final short break, don't go away. Welcome back from the south. A senior commander from Kataib Hezbollah, an armed group in Iraq that the Pentagon linked to an attack that killed 3 U.S. troops, died in a drone strike on a vehicle in eastern Baghdad. The security force sources and media reports said 3 people were killed in the strike and that the vehicle targeted had been used by Iraq's popular mobilization forces, a state security agency comprised of dozens of armed groups, many of them close to Iran. The 3 United States troops were killed in January in a drone attack near the Jordan-Syrian border that the Pentagon said bore the footprints of Kataib Hezbollah. On the other hand, Iran said it had nothing to do with the attack, which it blamed on the conflict between U.S. forces and resistance groups in the region. The UN High Commissioner for Refugees, Filippo Grandi, embarked on a poignant journey through Sudan, where he met with families torn apart by the devastating conflict ravaging the nation. With conflict raging in Sudan for the past 10 long months, the scale of displacement is staggering, with nearly 8 million people uprooted from their communities both inside and outside Sudan's borders, seeking refuge in neighboring countries such as Chad, South Sudan, Egypt, Central African Republic, and Ethiopia. During his visit to Ethiopia and Sudan, Grandi witnessed the heartbreaking realities faced by internally displaced families. In Port Sudan and Kassala, East Sudan, he listened to their stories, giving them a voice and calling for urgent support from the international community. Azerbaijani President Ilham Aliyev secured a fifth consecutive term in elections on Wednesday, winning 92% of the vote with a 67.7% turnout. The result was a predictable landslide, but Aliyev's rivals have alleged fraud. The elections were called a year early following Azerbaijan's recapture of the Nagorno-Karabakh region from Armenian separatists last September. Several thousands of Aliyev supporters gathered on Wednesday evening in the streets of central Baku to celebrate his re-election, singing patriotic songs and holding signs with messages such as "Karabakh's liberator" and "We are proud of you." The 6 other candidates to run were little known and had praised Aliyev as a great statesman and commander-in-chief since he announced the election in December, a year ahead of schedule. On Wednesday, several thousand people gathered in front of the Slovak parliament in Bratislava to protest criminal code reforms. The changes, which prompted a wave of anti-government protests, include easing the penalties for corruption and economic crimes. The parliament is expected to pass the controversial reforms via fast-track legislative procedure on Thursday, a step that has drawn condemnation from the president and opposition lawmakers. In its overhaul package, the ruling coalition also plans to abolish a specialized prosecutor's office that oversees cases of high-level corruption, which the coalition alleges has treated it unfairly. The topic of the criminal code reforms is expected to influence the result of the upcoming presidential election scheduled for March. We have come to the end of this news brief. You can find these and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net. You can also join us on our social media on Facebook, X, Instagram, Telegram, and TikTok. For TeleSUR English, I'm Luis Alberto Matos. Thank you for watching.